He was called the Mad Monk, a holy devil, a puppeteer pulling the strings of the Russian Empire. But who was Grigori Rasputin, the man behind the myth? Was he a sinner or a saint? A charlatan or a true healer? Today, we journey back in time, beyond the sensational headlines and into the heart of a story that continues to captivate the world. Our story begins not in the gilded palaces of St. Petersburg, but in the remote Siberian village of Pokrovskoye. Born in 1869, Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin was a peasant, a farmer, and a father. He was known for his intense, piercing eyes and a wild, unkempt appearance. In his late 20s, a profound spiritual awakening led him to abandon his village and embark on a pilgrimage. He wandered Russia as a strannik, or holy wanderer, surviving on donations and building a reputation as a man of God, a mystic who could offer spiritual guidance and even heal the sick. News of this charismatic peasant mystic traveled fast. By 1905, Rasputin had arrived in St. Petersburg, the glittering capital of the Russian Empire. The city's high society was in the grip of a spiritual fervor, fascinated by mysticism and the occult. Rasputin, with his rustic charm and intense piety, was an instant sensation. He was introduced to the highest echelons of society and eventually to the imperial family itself, Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra. This introduction would change the course of Russian history. The imperial couple was desperate. Their only son and heir to the throne, Alexei Nikolaevich, suffered from hemophilia, a genetic disorder that prevented his blood from clotting. Any minor bruise could lead to excruciating pain and life-threatening internal bleeding. Doctors were helpless, but when Rasputin was brought to the boy's bedside, a strange calm seemed to descend. He would pray, speak in soothing tones, and miraculously, Alexei's bleeding would often stop. To the desperate Tsarina Alexandra, Rasputin was a divine messenger, a man sent by God to save her son. She developed an unshakable faith in him, referring to him simply as our friend. Through Alexandra's devotion, Rasputin's influence grew exponentially. He became a fixture at the imperial court, offering not just spiritual comfort, but also advice on matters of state. To many, this was a scandal. How could an uneducated, uncouth peasant from Siberia hold such sway over the rulers of a vast empire? The timing could not have been worse. In 1914, Russia was plunged into the chaos of World War I. As millions of soldiers perished on the front lines, the situation back home grew dire. Tsar Nicholas II made the fateful decision to take personal command of the army, leaving the capital and the government in the hands of the deeply unpopular Tsarina Alexandra. And who was her closest confidant? Rasputin. The public perception was disastrous. Rumors fueled by a hostile press and jealous aristocrats ran wild. They painted Rasputin as a debauched manipulator who controlled the Tsarina through a sinister, almost hypnotic power. Cartoons depicted him as a grotesque puppeteer, with the Tsar and Tsarina as his marionettes. He was accused of appointing and dismissing ministers, meddling in military strategy, and engaging in drunken orgies within the palace walls. While his behavior was certainly unorthodox, and he did enjoy a boisterous social life, much of the media frenzy was a mix of exaggeration and outright fabrication, designed to undermine the monarchy. The line between documented evidence and myth became hopelessly blurred. The truth of his influence is complex. Did he appoint ministers? He certainly recommended candidates whom he believed were pious and loyal, and the Tsarina, trusting his judgment, often passed these names to the Tsar. But to say he single-handedly ran the government is an overstatement. His true power lay in his unique relationship with Alexandra, a bond forged through the shared crisis of Alexei's health. For the Empress, anyone who could ease her son's suffering was beyond reproach. This perceived influence, however, was a threat the Russian nobility could not tolerate. A conspiracy began to form, led by a group of powerful aristocrats who believed that killing Rasputin was the only way to save the monarchy from itself. The key players were Prince Felix Yusupov, a wealthy and flamboyant aristocrat married to the Tsar's niece, the Tsar's own cousin, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, and Vladimir Purishkevich, a right-wing politician. On a freezing night in December 1916, they lured Rasputin to Yusupov's Moika Palace. The story of that night has become the stuff of legend. Yusupov claimed they fed Rasputin cakes and wine laced with enough cyanide to kill several men, but he seemed unaffected. In a panic, Yusupov shot him. Rasputin fell, but then, according to Yusupov's dramatic account, he lunged back to life, staggering out into the courtyard. The other conspirators then fired more shots, finally bringing him down. They bound his body and threw it into the icy Neva River. When his body was discovered days later, an autopsy found water in his lungs, leading to the enduring myth that he had survived the poison and the bullets, only to drown. However, modern historical analysis suggests this is unlikely, and that Yusupov's account was heavily embellished to make the conspirators seem like heroes who had slain a supernatural demon. The reality is that a man was brutally murdered. The conspirators believed they had saved Russia. They were wrong. Rasputin's death did not restore faith in the monarchy. Instead, it exposed the rot and division at its very core. The Tsarina was devastated. The Tsar was isolated, and the government was paralyzed. Just a few months later, in March 1917, the February Revolution erupted, and the Romanov Dynasty, which had ruled for 300 years, came to an abrupt and violent end. So what is Rasputin's legacy? For decades, he was a caricature in popular culture, the evil monk, the mystical lover of the queen. But today, historians are taking a more nuanced view. They see a man who was a product of his time, a charismatic figure whose personal faith and ability to soothe a sick child placed him at the center of immense political power he was ill-equipped to handle. He was a symbol of the decay within the old Russian order, a catalyst for its collapse, but not its sole cause. The story of Grigori Rasputin is a powerful reminder of how personal faith, political intrigue, and public myth can intertwine to shape the destiny of an entire nation. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into one of history's most fascinating figures. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the past. We'll see you in the next one.